secularism. Next, unity and integrity of the country. Any law that violates any part of the constitution, but that is existing, because if it does, then judiciary will strike it down. But that exists in the assumed form. But especially for provisions in part 3, look what clause 2 is saying. The state shall not make any law which takes away or abridges. Abridges means to reduce or shorten. Abridges the rights conferred by this part. And any law made in contravention of this clause shall, to the extent of the contravention, be void. What does that mean? State, which means legislature at both levels, executive at both levels, they can, local bodies, etc. They cannot make any law that violates the rights mentioned in your part 3 of the constitution. No law will take away or abridge. Abridge means to shorten or reduce the availability of the right. Any law that takes away or abridges the rights conferred by this part shall, to the extent of that violation, shall be void. But who will declare it void? That's not mentioned over here, but it is assumed, right, that it will be the judiciary who will naturally declare it void. So, the idea is this, that's why I said that judicial review with respect to specifically one part of the constitution is categorically mentioned. For the rest of the constitution, it also exists, but in the assumed form, right. But in somewhat direct form, it is mentioned for fundamental rights. When I say somewhat direct form, it's not mentioned categorically over here who will strike it down as void. So, obviously, again we have to draw this conclusion, it will be the judiciary itself. So, the state cannot make any law that takes away or abridges any of the rights conferred by this part, and any law made in contravention of this clause shall, to the extent of any contravention, be void, right. Now, let us talk about this. State cannot make any law that violates fundamental rights. Okay. Let me ask a question to you. When state or institutions which are a part of state, they make a law, or they have this eagerness to make a law that violates fundamental rights, what is their intention behind it? To either abrogate the fundamental right or reduce its availability. What is it saying? Article 13(2) clause 2 is very clear. You will not make any law that violates or abridges or shortens any of the fundamental rights. You can't do that. These are fundamental rights, right. My next question is that what is the intention behind, what is the motivation behind legislature which is making a law to violate these rights? The intention is obviously the legislature does not want the right to be enjoyed to beyond a certain extent. It is trying to restrict or limit or abridge it or violate it outrightly. Basically, the intention of the legislature is what? To reduce the availability of the right. If you indeed are making a law that is violating or shortening, abridging a particular right, your intention is this only. You want to reduce the availability of the right or abrogate it completely. That's your intention. Court says you can't do that because Article 13 clause 2 is very clear. You cannot do that. Again, what is the intention? Some right are won. Parliament makes a law that takes away or abridges this right. That law will not be allowed to hold. It will be struck down. Intention is what? To either abrogate the right, not make it available at all, or reduce its availability, limit it, abridge it for the people. You can't do that. Okay. I cannot make a law, which is passed by simple majority obviously, which takes away or abridges this right. What is my intention? I want to reduce its availability. But I cannot do it by making a law. What if I do something else? By law, though, I cannot reduce or abrogate this right. What if I go through a more difficult course and amend this right in the constitution? Now, understand this, dear. Making a law by simple majority and violating or shortening or abridging a right, court will strike it down. My intention is to reduce the availability of the right or to make it unavailable completely. I cannot do it by a regular law that is there. But the next thing somebody would ask is, if I cannot do it like this, can I do it like this? That I cannot make a law that takes away this right. My intention is to reduce its availability. How about I reduce its availability by amending the right itself? Of course, I will have to go through the special amendment procedure under Article 368 and have the bill passed by a special majority of 2/3 instead of a simple majority based law. That part is okay. So the question is this only, that I cannot violate Parliament cannot violate your rights by an ordinary law making procedure because it will be struck down. But what if the Parliament passes a constitutional amendment bill and amends the right itself? And from there again, as I said, as in my previous screen, the heading over there, the topic which I was going to discuss, the heading was what? Amendability of fundamental rights. Are you getting the gist of what I am doing over here? The drift of my arguments over here. Now see here, a regular law cannot violate fundamental rights, cannot reduce them, cannot abrogate them because it will be struck down. But my intention is to abrogate or reduce the right. Why don't I abrogate and reduce the right in the constitution only? Why make a law to violate or abrogate it? Because I can't do that, court will strike it down, but I can amend the constitution. under Article 368. Remove this right or reduce this right in the Constitution itself. Can I do that? There is the question of amendability of fundamental rights, right? And the answer to this question boils down to the answer to another question. What does it say? Article 13, Clause 2. The state shall not make any law. Okay, now pay attention. Law. Ordinary law or statutory law, which is passed by legislature, you can't do that. I am taking it slow over here so that this topic is fully understandable to you. Ordinary law, statutory law, you cannot make that law which infringes upon fundamental rights. It will be struck down. Law can mean this. Law means obviously this it means. But there has been this controversy since the beginning of our constitutional governance that in Article 13, Clause 2, should the law, its meaning be confined only to this ordinary law, or should it also cover? Don't worry, it will be clear to you. Keep in mind that question, that particular proposition I presented before you. I cannot make a law passed by simple majority that violates the fundamental rights. It will be struck down. My intention was to violate the right or reduce it or make it unavailable, right? I can't do it by ordinary law. But what if, if my intention is this only to reduce the right? Well, amend the Constitution, amend that right only. I'll have to do it through the difficult procedure of getting a much larger majority of 2/3 for to have that particular law passed. But I can do that. If I cannot do it like this, I can do through the more difficult procedure, doing it like this. Right? That's the question. That's the question whether fundamental rights are amendable or not. And the answer to the question whether fundamental rights are amendable or not lies in the answer to another question. How do you define the term law in Article 13? Controversy over here. Somebody said that, law basically covers just this, that the state cannot make any law that violates ordinary law, that violates statutory law passed by simple majority, that state cannot make any law that violates fundamental rights. This is outside. This is a conservative, or should I say, a narrow interpretation of the term law. So what do I say? Read it again. 13 Clause 2, the state shall not make any law. Law covers only ordinary law, not constitutional amendment law. Therefore, if the state cannot violate our rights by ordinary law, and this term law does not cover constitutional amendment law, therefore, they cannot violate that right R1 by ordinary law, but they can violate it through constitutional amendment law, because I am using the narrow definition over here of the term law, the conservative definition as only being applicable to ordinary law, and in this term law, constitutional amendment law is outside it. Or somebody would say, yeah, here because fundamental rights are so important, shouldn't the law and fundamental rights are so uniquely fundamental, shouldn't they be further insulated from any kind of infringement by the parliament or the state legislature? Parliament is the only entity which can amend the constitution. Shouldn't the term law also not just include ordinary law but also constitutional amendment law? Now see here, look at the two different universes you will be sent into when you use the conservative definition or the more liberal, wider, broader definition. 13 Clause 2, you cannot make any law that violates fundamental rights, and the term law we are defining as only applicable to ordinary law, right? It does not include constitutional amendment law. So you cannot violate the right by ordinary law, but you can violate it by amending the right itself, because the definition of law in its narrow conception is not covering this. Now you go for the wider conception. Wider conception, they say, should include not just this but this also. Now read it again. The state cannot make any law in the wider sense, ordinary law. So you cannot violate the fundamental rights by ordinary law. Wider conception says we will also include in the term law constitutional amendment. State cannot make any law, either ordinary law or constitutional amendment law, right, that violates the fundamental rights. Therefore, fundamental rights are unamendable. Now, again, I'll tell you, understand this. Can fundamental rights be amended? The answer to this question lies in the answer to another question. How do you define the term law over here? If you use the narrow, constricted definition of law, the more conservative definition, that it applies only to this. Okay, ordinary law you cannot violate fundamental rights, but then you can amend those fundamental rights because constitutional amendment law is outside this definition. But if you go by a more liberal, wider definition of the term law, you are including this also. So therefore, now read it again, 13 Clause 2, the state cannot make any law, neither this, nor even this. In the first case, state cannot not make any law, only this is outside. So narrow definition means what? Constitutional amendment law is outside this. They can amend the right, but they cannot make an ordinary law. Wider definition, you can neither do this nor even do this. You can neither do this nor you can do this. So you got the idea over here now, that the question of whether fundamental rights are amendable or not, this question boils down to the answer to another question, that how do you define the term law in Article 13 Clause 2? One is the narrow one. If you use the narrow interpretation, then of course by ordinary law, so you cannot violate fundamental rights, but you can very well amend it, remove it possibly, right? Wider definition, you can either do this, not do that. Now, you know, what has been the apex court's position, which has been changing over time for the last so many decades, with respect to this question of defining the term law, and on the basis of whatever definition they choose, the answer to the question whether fundamental rights are amendable. If they choose the wider definition, then includes constitutional amendment law, fundamental rights are not even amendable. You cannot do this, you can't even do this. If you choose the narrow interpretation, you cannot do this, but you can very well remove the fundamental right. You can very well amend the fundamental right through the more elaborate procedure under Article 368. Now, what has been the apex court's position on this? Various cases over here. Shankari Prasad case 1951 to Sajjan Singh case 1965. The apex court, keep in mind, how do you define the term law under Article 13 clause 2? Law, definition 1, law includes only ordinary law or salutary law, right? Definition 2, it includes ordinary law plus constitutional amendment law. Getting the idea? So, from this particular case to this case, from Shankari Prasad case to Sajjan Singh case, apex court held, in fact, apex court subscribed to the narrow definition, the more conservative definition, that obviously ordinary lawmaking, through ordinary lawmaking, you cannot violate fundamental rights, but you can very well amend the fundamental. And in fact, you know, the proposition what the court was trying to lay down in those days was that the right of the parliament to, the authority and power of the parliament to amend the constitution is completely unfettered. It is unrestricted, right? So, if you are using the narrow interpretation of the term law as per Article 13 clause 2, so from here to here, the court is saying what? You can amend any part of the constitution, including even fundamental rights, right? Then came a very important judgment after these two. In the Golaknath case, Golaknath versus State of Punjab, 1967, it was an 11-judge bench and with a very narrow majority of 6:5, because whatever the majority decides is actually the judgment. Minority opinion is not the judgment. In this case, for the first time you see, the apex court reverses its earlier position. Now goes over to the more liberal interpretation, wider, broader interpretation of the term law, and going to the extent of, you know, using expressions like, the fundamental rights are after all called fundamental for a reason. They have been given a uniquely elevated position, status in the constitution. They are transcendental in nature, like, you know, they transcend, rise above the other provisions. Therefore, when in the earlier case they were using the narrow interpretation, therefore fundamental rights were amendable. In Golaknath case, by a narrow majority, eventually the apex court now finally said that we will use the broader interpretation and that fundamental rights are amendable. Neither can you violate fundamental rights by ordinary law, nor even amend them, nor even violate them through amendment or through their removal, through any kind of amendment procedure. They cannot be done. Fundamental rights are untouchable. Uniquely elevated position has been given to them. There's a reason why you call them fundamental. They use expressions like fundamental rights part 3 has been given a transcendental. What is transcend? Transcend means to rise above the other provisions. A more uniquely elevated position and status has been given to them. To that extent, we will not allow the government or the parliament to even amend them. Earlier position was you can amend them, you cannot make ordinary law violating them, but you can amend them, right? You can amend any part of the constitution. Right of the parliament to amend the constitution is unfettered, unrestricted, unlimited. But here a limitation was placed. You cannot, neither can you make an ordinary law violating fundamental rights, nor can you amend them. Now, during the 70s, in order to get around this judgment of Golaknath, there was Indira Gandhi's times those days. Now, 24th Amendment Act 1971. Indira Gandhi was there at that time, and possibly she was not keen on having any restrictions on the powers of the parliament to amend the constitution or perhaps even fundamental rights. So, by this particular Amendment Act, both Article 13 and 368 were amended. In Article 13, a clause 4 was added, and in 368, clause 3 was added. Now, let's look what was added. Let's have a look over here. Now, as I said that, you know, a clause 4 was added by the 24th Amendment Act 1971 to Article 13. Now, look what this clause 4 says. And a clause 3 was added in Article 368. Now, see what it says. Nothing in this article shall apply to any amendment of this constitution made under Article 368. Now, you know, you see over here, what did Golaknath judgment say? Golaknath judgment was very clear that you can't amend. You can't even use 368 procedure to amend fundamental rights or to alter or infringe them. You cannot do it by ordinary law. You can't even do it by constitutional amendment. But if you put this statement in the constitution, clause 4, you can see added by the 24th Amendment Act 1971, that nothing in this article basically means what? There is a term law over here in this article only. And Golaknath is saying what? Golaknath judgment is saying what? Law will include ordinary law as well as constitutional amendment law. And look what they are saying over here now. Nothing in this article shall apply. Nothing in this article, including the term law over here, will not apply to any amendment to this constitution made under Article 368. So it's actually, what in those days Indira Gandhi was trying to do, or the parliament was trying to do, appropriate term, parliament should be used over here. Parliament was trying to do was to codify the narrow interpretation of the expression law as per Article 13 clause 2. Bhai, see here, narrow interpretation is the word law applies only to ordinary law. Wider interpretation, it applies to constitutional amendment also. Now see here, what are they saying over here in this amendment? Nothing in this article shall apply to any amendment of this constitution made under Article 368. Nothing in this article, including the term law, will not include constitutional amendment law. So the earlier opinion of the court was what, this only, that they were also subscribing to the narrow interpretation. So they are actually, through this amendment act, an attempt was made to codify that narrow interpretation. And not just this, clause 4 being added over here. There was another clause 3 added in Article 368. Right. So as I said that there was a change made in Article 13 with the addition of clause 4. Now see here, in Article 368 also, a clause 3 was added. See what it says. By the same Amendment Act, 24th Amendment Act 71. Nothing in Article 13, including the word law over there, shall apply to any amendment made under this article. Basically, the same thing is written. There in Article 13, what was added in terms of clause 4, that nothing in Article 13 will apply to an amendment made over here. So codification of the narrow interpretation, right? And then again to doubly fortify it and secure it, a clause 3 was added in 368. Nothing in this in Article 13. Nothing in the Article 13 means including the word law over there shall apply to any amendment made under this particular article, right? So in fact, what the Parliament was trying to do during this time was obviously to codify the restrictive interpretation of the word law, and then on that basis make fundamental rights amendable. To the 24th Amendment Act, 13 clause 4 was added, clause 4 was added to Article 13 and clause 3 was added to Article 368 to codify that narrow interpretation of the term law. Now going further, this Amendment Act was the one that was challenged in the landmark, perhaps the greatest case in the annals of judicial history, that is the case of Keshananda Bharti versus State of Kerala, 1973. Now, interestingly, if you look at this particular case, who was Keshananda Bharti? He was basically a clergyman, a priest of Adnir Mutt. There are a number of mutts in Hinduism, you know this thing, of the Adnir Mutt in Kerala. Actually, this case was not originally about, amendability of fundamental rights. Keshananda Bharti, who was a senior pontiff means a clergyman, priest, etc., of the Adnir Mutt of Kerala, he had basically filed a petition, fundamental rights petition, in the context of violation of religious freedom rights, religious rights as such. Because, if you look at Article 26, which I will talk about later also, it actually gives the freedom to every religious denomination to acquire religious property for setting up shrines and other kinds of temples, etc., etc. And it also gives the freedom to religious denominations to manage that property on their own. But then in Kerala, some laws were enacted which were interfering in the management of religious properties, interfering in the management of religious endowments, the properties of religious denominations, etc. So he had basically challenged it in the context of interference of the state in the management of religious properties, which is actually a fundamental right under Article 26. But it is not so simple also, because let me come to Article 26, where I'll explain the complexity of that article also. It's a very complex article, right? Moving further, but perhaps Keshananda Bharti did not know that this case which he was filing basically in the context of freedom of religion, it is going to evolve into a case for deciding that very question again, that whether fundamental rights are amendable or not, right? Eventually, it was in this particular case, the Apex Court came out with a judgment which codified the concept of basic structure. Now see here, before I come to this, Shankari Prasad, 1951, Sajjan Singh, 1965, Golaknath. First two cases, everything is amendable. Okay, Golaknath case, fundamental rights are completely unamendable. Right. Now, Keshananda Bharti case, 1973. You can see this, the extreme positions over here. in the first 15-year period from 51 to 65, court said everything is amendable, including fundamental rights. Golaknath said fundamental rights to at least are not amendable at all. They are untouchable. The apex court in the Keshanda Bharti case, when it evolved the theory of basic structure, it took a middle path, neither as extreme as this nor as extreme as this. They said, they agreed with this aspect firstly, every part is amendable. All parts of the constitution, all provisions are amendable, subject to one condition. No amendment should have the effect of violating or altering or changing those elements which we feel, the court said, are a part of the basic structure of the constitution. So, they are taking a middle path over here. Na? They said everything is amendable. They said others are amendable, but fundamental rights are totally unamendable. Right? Keshanda Bharti is taking a Y media over here. They said, okay, fine, we will accept the first logic, everything is amendable, but then with this rider, with this proviso, that you can amend anything subject to those elements of the constitution which we feel are a part of the basic structure, the core identity of the constitution. Achha, you know, when naturally this idea was, this question was raised in those days also in 73, what are those elements of, what are those features of the constitution which together in effect form the notion of basic structure? Courts at that time basically gave some illustrations only, but they gave a general definition, a very general definition. They said those elements, basic structure obviously, those elements without which, or if there is an infringement of them, the constitution will lose its very soul and essence. Very general statement, obviously, you know, multiple different types of persons will have different interpretations as to what makes, what particular provision, if it is removed, makes the constitution lose its soul or essence that is there. But yes, this was a general definition given by the apex court in those days, that what are those basic features which form the basic structure. So, they said those features without which the constitution will lose its soul and essence. So, you can see, you know, how the via media, what is via media? Middle path is being drawn over here. Here extreme, everything is amendable. Here one part is totally unamendable. Court here says everything is amendable, but subject to, you cannot amend those elements of our constitution which form its core basic structure. They did give some illustrations without giving a comprehensive list. They gave some illustrations as such, but they gave a general definition. That is those parts of the constitution without which the constitution will lose its soul or its essence. Achha, now after 73, because in 73 this judgment just came about, everybody was very keen to know ki what are precisely those basic features or those elements of the constitution that constitute basic structure. Chalo, 73 is like how many years back now? It's almost like 50 years back. Over the last 5 decades or so, in multiple decisions that the apex court has given, in some decision it would say that, okay, in this context, we are identifying this particular element as a part of basic structure. Another decision comes subsequently, okay, we are identifying this also as a part of basic structure. And then a subsequent decision comes, okay, this is also identified as a part of basic structure. So, over the last 50 years, 5 decades or so, we have been able to develop a very elaborate list of those features which in various judgments, the multiple judgments, which the court has identified and categorically identified as components of basic structure. Because in 73 they were giving merely some illustrations, every judge trying to, you know, give his own illustrations with a general definition with those features without which the constitution will lose its essence or its soul. But subsequently in the last 5 decades, through numerous judgments in which they kept on pointing out, like federalism is a part of basic structure, parliamentary form of government is basic structure, judicial review is basic structure, independence of judiciary is a basic structure, principle of welfare state is basic structure, right, and so on and so forth. A number of features now we are able to, you know, we now have a long list of those features which the apex court has identified as components of, in the last 5 decades, as components of basic structure. Now, just to give you an illustration of what kind of elements have been so notified by the court as parts of basic structure, so just some components. Supremacy of the constitution has to be an element of basic structure. Rule of law, obviously we are a democracy, it has to be. Then separation of powers has to be. Next, judicial review, most definitely. Then federalism or federal structure. Then secularism. Next, unity and integrity of the country. Next, sovereign, democratic, republican structure. Next, I am still giving you an illustrative list, not an exhaustive one, right? Then dignity of the individual. of the individual. So what do we have? What do we have is supremacy of the constitution, rule of law, separation of powers, judicial review, federalism, secularism, unity and integrity of the nation, sovereign democratic republic structure, dignity of the individual. Go further. We can add some more over here. Independence of judiciary. Go further. Principle of welfare state. Even parliamentary form of government, which means that the court has placed a bar on this, that we cannot switch over from parliamentary form to a presidential system. Parliamentary form of government also, right? Then very interesting. Limitations on amending powers under Article 368. Wait, what are the limitations on amending powers? One limitation is that obviously you cannot amend the constitution by simple majority. That's a limitation. 2/3 majority is required. And then certain parts of the constitution can be amended only with the consent of half the state legislatures also. These are limitations. Okay. I mean, tomorrow you cannot amend Article 368 and place it over there that all parts of the constitution can be amended by simple majority. I mean, somebody would be keen enough to do that. He amend 368 only and there replace the amendment procedure, or somebody would simply say that amendment of the constitution can done only by executive notification. The ruling party can amend it simply by giving an order also. So there are limitations on amendment powers which are given in 368. So in a sense, what the Apex Court is saying, that provisions of 368 are also a part of basic structure. You cannot even change this, at least the core of it, which in terms of special responsibility, special majority required, and the super special majority, where you also require the consent of half of the states. So even this is a part of basic structure. So I've given you a lot of, it's not an exhaustive list, an illustrative list of the features which the Apex Court has subsequently in the last 4 or 5 decades identified as components of basic structure. Right. Now, something which is not normally mentioned in books also, on which at least once a question has been asked.